The DV image is not a picture. There is no shutter. It is only a finger in constant movement creating interface. Charge of the light barricade, as Joyce called it.
Patricia Berkman. I came to the University of Toronto in the fall of 1953 to be a graduate student in English. Until that point, I knew absolutely nothing about Marshall McLuhan at all. Nothing. I discovered him when I went to inquire about courses, and the secretary of the department, who was himself an academic in the 17th century, thought that I might find this interesting. Do you want to hear the story of my first meeting? So I was told that I would find him. There was then a house where the McLuhans lived on the grounds of the St. Mike's campus. So I went over, and it was the sort of house you couldn't figure out which was the front door and which was the back. So I circled the house several times, and I thought, God, they'll think I'm a burglar. So finally I made a choice. It was the wrong one. And I opened the door and ended up in a kind of dark corridor. And I put my foot into a bag of oranges. The bag broke, and many, there must have been at least 3 dozen oranges, were all over the place. And when the door opened by Corinne McLuhan, she saw a graduate student in the dark who was desperately trying to stuff dozens of oranges back into a broken brown bag. I came to the University of Toronto in the fall of 1953 to be a graduate student in English. Until that point, I knew absolutely nothing about Marshall McLuhan at all. Nothing. I discovered him when I went to inquire about courses, and the secretary of the department, who was himself an academic in the 17th century, thought that I might find this interesting. Do you want to hear the story of my first meeting? So I was told that talked for 2 hours, passionately interested in how the world was governed now by the cult of the East and the cult of the West, and I thought I'd never met anybody as interesting as this. We talked about Masons and Rosicrucians and literature and what did I want to do, and it was perfectly clear that while I wanted to do other courses, I had come from a very small convent school in the States, and I'd never met anyone like this, so I thought this is the course I've got to do. When we were almost winding down, there wandered across the field, and this is someone you really should get in the film. Have you heard of Donald Thiel? All right. Well, it may be difficult for all the reasons you'll know. Suddenly this rather portly young man appeared, and one of his problems is he can't open his mouth any more than that. So he mumbled, and he said, "This is Don Thiel," mumble, mumble. He was wearing a Timothy Dwight Yale blazer. I don't know why I remember that, but he was. And he was obviously the prize student, as indeed he remained for a long time. I signed up for the course. We went, as you always do, to the graduate school once a week for a 2-hour seminar. It met in his office, which was for some reason a long, thin office. And he had a lot of books in old orange crates, especially a huge collection of detective stories that he kept on the top. And the orange crates, of course, would have fallen down, but he had his Cambridge rowing oar in between, and that kept it apart. Now, you didn't really have to duck when you went in, but I found myself always doing this. Whenever I went home for a holiday, he'd say, "You need some detective stories to keep you going." And he would hand it to me and say, "Put it inside a volume of the Interpreter's Bible, and nobody will know what you're doing. Ha, ha, ha." tremendous amount. And he cared about you very much. As the case of the famous figs and white wine, he always wanted to know if you had a good time. The best night was the night he called in desperation and said he'd forgotten that this was the next year, I guess. The graduate seminar was meeting, and he'd forgotten, and he had to go to the choir school where Eric must have been singing. So he said, could you go down and deal with the class until I get back? So I was going off with somebody, a guy from the CBC, and I said, we've got to go down and help out. And I walked in, there they all sat, waiting for the guru to turn up. And I said, Professor McLuhan is unable to come tonight until about 10 o'clock. He's asked me to get you going. I was making it up as I went along. And now I looked over the record cabinet, and I pulled out St. Sitwell, Reading Facade at full volume. I put it on the record player and turned it up about as high as it would go. And I said, now please listen to this with very great care. And when you're finished, turn it over and play the other side and just keep doing it. And the guy from the CBC said, are you crazy? And I said, let's keep them going. The next day, Marshall called up and he said, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That's exactly what to do. They were filled with all kinds of crazy things when I got back. But his sense was that this again was an idea. He said, why did you do it? I said, I was desperate, Marshall, that's all. It's okay. One of the nice things he did when my husband and I were married, as a wedding present, he gave us a copy of Mechanical Bird.